Hello, it's Joey Remenyi here from seekingbalance.com.au. I'm a vestibular audiologist and neuroplasticity therapist, and I take great pleasure in supporting the recovery of people with chronic, elusive, invisible symptoms, mostly chronic tinnitus, chronic dizziness, and chronic vertigo. However, there's a lot of human mix going on in our community. So some of you listening may have chronic pain or depression or feelings of disconnection and anxiety, and you are so welcome here too. Today, we're going to have a conversation and perhaps touch some of the edges of our discomfort around our sexuality, pleasure, and exploring dark places from soft, gentle, grounded landings. And my co-conspirator in this conversation is Shae Elise Allen, who's based in Melbourne, another Australian beautiful woman. Shae describes herself as a heart woman, mother, baby crone, sexuality educator, somatic body worker, midlife alchemist, and transformational guide. Welcome to the call, Shae. This is a treat.
Thank you so much, Joey. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So today, Shae, I would love to unpack a little bit about pleasure, which in a sense could be a trigger word that people shy away from exploring. And to put it into context for my listeners who are experiencing chronic illness, the Rocksteady pathway and the Rocksteady, I've got my book here, and the Rocksteady program, which is how I support people to rewire their body and to reset new neural templates that feel normal, that feel good, that feel pleasurable, that feel the way they want to feel. The process is about meeting where I am and what I'm feeling now, deciding how I want to feel and following that inkling of desired sensations, and then figuring out how to close that gap. So, okay, well, I'm here. How can I meet that with loving awareness, but not get stuck here and dwell here? How can I begin to open up the conversation of where I'm going and where I'm directing my brain and my neural pathways to form new connections? And that is really following the path of pleasure. And we often don't integrate this conversation with pleasure from a place of healthy sexuality, which is a huge part of our wholeness and why it's an important conversation for our community. So, Shae, the listeners may not feel so connected to their sexuality. Very commonly in my community, I think people are really afraid of their bodies. And so sex really just comes off the menu. And I suppose I want to include these conversations because it's important to remember we can heal and we can get there, and it doesn't need to be big and fast and scary. It can be those gentle steps towards discovering pleasure on our fingertips and the wind on our cheeks. So, Shae, would you like to introduce the listeners perhaps a little bit to your fascination with pleasure? And
Absolutely.
let them get to know you.
Sure. Yes. Thanks, Joey. So as you mentioned, I'm a sexuality educator and a women's empowerment coach and mentor. And I came into this work. Through my own challenges, actually. So when I first really deeply opened to this work was after I had my daughter. So she's 15 now. When she was around 2, I really started acknowledging that my connection to my body was, it was absent, actually. Like I didn't really have the connection to my body that I desired and that I knew. Like it was like a deep calling in my bones. I knew that there was something more that I wanted to explore and step into. So I started exploring my own relationship to my body, my relationship to spirit as well, to meditation, to dance, to just being more in my body around that time. And then I started on a much deeper journey soon after of really going to the depths of connecting to my body through my sexuality. Not for the faint-hearted.
No, but worth it. And that's why these conversations are so important. I just want to ask a little question that's very relevant to our listeners. If you can remember, because I know going back that far, it can be, we actually forget what the symptomatology and sensations of our body were, but can you remember what disconnected felt like to you? Because feeling disconnected is often the place my Rocksteady community members start, Can you remember
Yeah.
how that showed up in your body, what the symptoms were, how your body was talking to you and saying, come home, Shay, come home?
Yeah, well, I was really in my head. So I was really thinking a lot about what I should be like, what I and what I wasn't, what I perceived that I wasn't. I was really challenged in feeling pleasure in my body. I was critical of my body, so this is all being up in my head. So it was really, just feeling like I wanted to feel, and the meditation practice really supported this, just a greater sense of self-love ultimately is what it was that I was really yearning for at that time. And that was that was sort of the inner guidance from my bones that was speaking through me, that I had to develop the courage to follow at the time. But yeah, it was really just, all of those things that I mentioned, and just, I guess, a feeling of emptiness as well, of not feeling fulfilled.
I was going to say, and often at a physical sensory level, there's often comes with feelings of numbness, contraction and tightness, which could then, with this kind of a dull ache, or like sometimes people say cotton wool in their head. Fast thoughts is a really common one. And then, of course, for some people, it will also manifest as feeling a bit spacey, a bit out of body, a bit dizzy.
Yes.
So yeah, manifest differently for each of us.
Absolutely. And I think for me, like, I did experience pleasure in my body, but I knew that it was limited, and it was in a box, I would say. And there was a feeling that, I could connect to this on a much deeper level. So that was the pathway forward for me.
I really, really relate to that, because I experience pleasure for sure in my body, but I feel like there's a soul voice going, there's so much more. You don't even know what questions to ask. It's like that, what's out there beyond perhaps what society's given to me as on the menu, or what's not on the menu. And this discovery of going within and being willing to feel through the darkness.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the importance of pleasure, and a little bit more about navigating and having the bravery to say what next, and some of the challenges perhaps that came up as you started that inquiry and perhaps started tiptoeing into the darkness.
So just touching on the importance of pleasure. So pleasure is our life force energy. It's that pure life force energy that flows through us. And our sexuality is our life force energy as well. It's the energy that brings us into this human form, So it's the most like fundamental energy that I believe we need to connect to in order to feel like really grounded in our bodies, in order to feel joyful, pleasurable, and really own our place in these bodies on this planet. So
and another word coming up for me is shame. I think when we don't go there, and when there are no words or no exploration, and it's sort of like, I'll just leave that there and go to the post office and post my letter. There's an element of unspoken shame that lives deep inside of us and limits us, holds us back, because it's the elephant in the room just sitting there blocking some of those pleasure pathways.
Shame is huge. So from the moment we're born, our societal conditioning tells us to feel shameful about the pleasure feelings in our bodies, and we feel pleasure throughout our whole lives. No one likes to talk about it, but children have sexual energy, and then we sort of really come into our sexual energy as young women, like very young maidens, when we're like 11, or when the estrogen starts to activate in the body, and we start to feel, we start to feel our vaginas, we start to feel that sexual energy awaken in our body. It starts to pulsate, but there's no discussion or no cultural permission mostly to talk about that type of thing, and so it becomes suppressed.
And I'm curious, well, the way you're using sexual energy here, I just want to clarify for the listeners, are you coming from a place of really exploring our Eros, like our our inner world, our inner capacity for possibility and change and adaptability and excitement. You're not necessarily referring to sex from a genital place or even shared with another person. You're more talking about that space within us as a person, as a single person.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to make that clarity, because there's so much loading on the term.
There is so much loading on it, and it is, it's a confronting thing to talk about. And yes, I am talking about the Eros when I talk about sexuality. So thank you, Joey, for clarifying that, because it is all the societal conditioning that tarnishes that beautiful, powerful Eros energy that is our our very basic nature, and puts a different lens on it that is somehow not okay. And of course, like anything in life, our Eros develops with us. So when we're little, it can be like squealing as we run down a hill and just feeling like this incredible energy pulsing through our body. And that's just the most incredible thing in the world to experience as a little child. And then, as I was saying, like as you develop into puberty, you have new experiences that as you start to mature, and it's all really wholesome and erotically innocent.
That's exactly what I'm feeling. There's a purity and a pure innocence, and it's so often drilled out of us. And so as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking I was trained not to feel. And so I missed a lot of this Eros, and I was locked in, how should I perform? I'm going to get in trouble if I don't say or do the right thing. So there was a lot of inner conflict for me, which dampened my Eros, I would say, most of the time. And then my creativity and my Eros would come through in certain ways when I felt alone and I felt safe, which was often through art and music. Or I remember standing as a 15-year-old, and it's 100% not recommended to climb Uluru, which is a sacred Indigenous site in Central Australia. But I was kind of ignorant and arrogant as a 15-year-old, and I chose to explore it. And I'm kind of glad I did. They say it's the heart chakra of Mother Earth. And it cracked me open. When I got to the top of Uluru as a 15-year-old, I think I had one of my most memorable moments of Eros. I felt like Mother Earth had plugged me in and I was recharging. I was on the ultimate battery recharge. And so the other thing I want to talk about is we need to be patient with our nervous systems and with our maturity, that we can hold those feelings and that it doesn't overwhelm us or unsettle us or move us into this place of feeling abnormal or triggered or symptomatic, because it feels too much and we don't know what to do with these feelings. And I think this brings us back to the rock steady path of gentleness and body scanning and coming back to what's safe and feeling little by little, small amounts of pleasure at a time, to let our nervous system build up to the bigger downloads of pleasure if and when they come.
Absolutely. And because of the world that we live in, and the shame and the porn culture and all of the elements of our introduction to our Eros and our sexuality, it's so triggering for people to get to a stage in their life where they know that they want to open to this energy, but feel so, well, as you say, their nervous system can't hold it, like it's really very overwhelming and it's incredibly vulnerable. So this work, the rock steady work that you do, Joey, is really aligned to my work as well, just with regards to holding that space for oneself to just be really present with the vulnerability of that, and not try to make it something else, or not try to push yourself into feeling or being something that you think you should be, but actually just exploring that space of gentleness with oneself,
I've got a giggle brewing, because a conversation we had off air, not today, another day, was you made a comment of, feeling this kind of sexy energy doesn't have to look like a fraternity movie with, woo and and like really letting go of all of that conditioned, confusing imagery and bigness and this sensational kind of, it feels icky and fake to me. Whereas if I drop into, okay, what's my authentic Eros? And I was actually thinking about this before our call today. So thank you for inspiring a little bit of time for me to drop in and play with this. But I was down at the beach, had my little baby, was getting ready to have my coffee ritual, and I just started swinging my hips, and it was a really delayed, slow stroll. There was no rush, and I allowed my attention and my body scanning and my kind of neural patterning to drop into the rhythm of my hips and to feel my body. And I thought, this is what it is. It's actually going, okay, here and now, in any moment, on any day, where is the pleasure now? And how can I scan my inner world and my felt sense of being for a little bit of playful pleasure? And it almost felt like I was having a cheeky moment with myself where it's like, nobody else knows what I'm doing, but I'm having fun.
Yeah,
And
I love it.
I'm just out and about. And this, I think, is the playfulness of Eros. It's our inner world. It's our inner kink. It's our inner how we like it. And there's kind of no limits here. And I find when we get stuck in chronic illness in particular, but not necessarily this, but when we do get stuck in chronic illness, we lose our capacity to imagine and to fantasize. And a huge part of the Rocksteady healing process is having an awareness of what's going on in our inner world and having the imaginal creativity to rewrite it, to rescript it, and to redesign something that feels authentic and yummy and safe.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a beautiful segue into the way I work as well, which is really anchored in permission granting.
Yes.
Because even, swinging one's hips, how divinely beautiful, like by the sea, like it feels so good.
Yeah.
But that can be confronting for the majority of women, because that in and of itself is quite, even the flow of moving one's hips around, we can be stuck because of the conditioning that we've been led by throughout our lives. So, even just gently breathing from the heart down into the pelvic bowl can be a beautiful start to just, okay, I'm just going to set this intention to give myself permission just to feel first, just to feel what it feels like to actually breathe into my heart and then breathe that energy down into my pelvic bowl, and then just take my consciousness down there and just breathe and just be with nature and just be with the body. And there's so much in that, like it sounds simple, but it's profoundly huge.
It is. And it's when it comes to neuroplasticity and transformation, which is your realm as well, Shay, it's the subtle, tiny network shifts that happen through repetition, through daily awareness, through gentleness. When I've said this just on repeat for a few years now, but when we're in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, when we're in the sympathetic stress system, that neuroplasticity, adaptable capacity really pauses, because the body's like, well, I don't want to build new networks that feel good. There's a buy-in over there, or there's something going on. So I'll just stop all of that activity and I'll just have my eye on alert, and I'll be hypervigilant, which is where a lot of my clients start. And it's about unlearning that and interrupting the sympathetic fight, flight, freeze response in whatever way works for me, because we're all different. And then being able to pause and drop into some of this work you're talking about, of learning to pause and feel and give ourselves permission to feel pleasure. And one of the words I want to gift our listeners, which has been so helpful for me as I've navigated this reimagining of pleasure and feeling okay with myself and removing myself from that world of shoulds and pleasing others, is awkward. It feels really awkward when you're not used to this, and you're like, okay, am I doing it right? This feels awkward. You're on track. Like, feeling awkward is part of the remapping and part of the unfamiliar. So from that place of awkwardness, I'd love you to speak to, why is it vulnerable to explore pleasure? Why is it vulnerable to feel pleasure? Like, that perplexes me. Like, shouldn't it be easy? But it's not.
Well, it's not when we operate from the mind. So if we're sort of up here in the head, and we're we're really connected to the conditioning and what we've been told about our bodies and how we should act as women, and how we should engage with the world as women, how we should engage with our own bodies as women, then that patterning is so profoundly strong. As young girls and women, we've been raised to believe and to understand that the male pattern of arousal, which is quick, fast, penetrative, like immediate, that is what we should be responding to. But actually the yin pattern of arousal is about really dropping into the body through the senses and being still. So I think with regards to that awkwardness that you speak of, a really beautiful way to navigate that is to do some work, to do some sensory work. So connecting to the senses. What I really love to do when I'm on my walk is just commit to every time I see, and it's beautiful to do this in the springtime, of course, but every time I see a beautiful rose, I'll stop and I will smell the rose, and I'll bring that scent right down into like the very depths of my womb, like I bring it right into my body. And, even just allow some of the dew to like just fall onto my face, and just actually have that, give yourself to the sensory experience, and that receive it. So that might be something that you build up to as well. What I just explained is like the depth of that is probably something more practiced. Initially it's just breathing in the scent, if you do feel awkward about exploring this aspect of your being, but it can be like picking a bunch of rosemary and just walking and smelling and breathing and just being, using the senses to be present with what is there. And sometimes it's not comfortable. Often it's not comfortable.
Well, and I think that's the vulnerable piece, and allowing ourselves to be awkward and be in the unfamiliar means we're actually allowing new neural templates to fire. And the reason it feels awkward and uncomfortable is because new systems are integrating, and new systems are talking to each other, and new synapses are starting to sort of tinker. And some of those synapses might be around, feeling at ease in the body, relaxing, actually turning off the alarm system. And for my clients, that feels weird. It's like, hang on a minute, where is my safety net? Where is that alarm system? Because I want it looking all the time. And when that stops going, it can be like, oh my God, am I sleepy? Am I dead? Am I lazy? So there's all of this questioning, when actually, no, it's just that's the nervous system slowing down so that the pleasure signals have time and space to begin finding their new connections and synapses.
Absolutely. Yes. I think also giving yourself permission to be curious and to explore is a really important intention to make as you step into this, onto this pathway, into this work. Because if we give ourselves permission to be curious, we sort of take the pressure off, like that there needn't be any grand expectation. It's exploring the body and your relationship to the world in a very non-linear yin way, which is just not how we've been conditioned to be. So to really hold yourself in that is a really important aspect of this.
Keywords for me through this process have been willingness, to have the willingness to feel effortless, to let it be effortless, like to let my experience of the world around me to be uncontrived, not premeditated, no agenda, not doing what I think I should do because that's somehow a cultural expectation put on me, but to sort of consciously put all that aside, eventually let it go, and to live in this paradigm of effortlessness, accepting reality as it is, not fighting what's showing up, and allowing my neural networks and allowing the innate intelligence of my body to really do the work for me. So I'm sitting back as a witness and as a co-creator, as a participant, because I can direct where my attention goes, but really allowing this effortless, gentle exploration to unfold and unfurl, And there was something I wanted to ask you, Shay, on, and I don't know if this is an Australian specific question, but I'm going to ask it anyway in case it's globally relevant. With this whole thing of pleasure being vulnerable, part of me feels like that tall poppy syndrome. Well, I don't want to be too happy or too full of myself or too pleasured, because that might make other people feel awkward.
Yeah.
Which what's with
It, it,
that?
it's a huge one. And actually, it's a beautiful question to ask, given what I was thinking just at the end of what you were sharing. I was thinking, and also it's about knowing that we are worthy. We are worthy of this. And that is just such, I think that underpins everything, like our connection to our self-worth and knowing that we are inherently worthy. And we can say that and intellectually believe it, but actually we need to do these practices to really embody that and to allow that knowledge and that wisdom to really ignite in the body. But yeah, sure. I mean, we've been shamed about our sexuality. We've been slut shamed, and we've been, shamed for being too successful, shamed for being too talkative and confident, shamed for so many different things as women. And other women are triggered by other women as well, because this is the patriarchal conditioning that we've been raised with.
What I'm feeling is it almost feels like there's a fine line between dropping into this beautiful journey and owning it and reclaiming it and feeling a sense of friendship with pleasure and navigating that in our own way, a room to oneself. Like it's a personal journey. And in doing that, actually liberating, and this is really for men too, like we're using a lot of women, but this is relevant for men also. But as we own our pleasure and sit into it and breathe into it and enjoy it, we probably don't need to talk about it so much, but we're still somehow giving other people permission to do that for themselves.
Yeah.
And I think when the vulnerability or fear creeps in, that's probably when it can get a bit more sensationalist and a bit louder and a bit more in your face. And there's a lack of authenticity there because the fear's crept in. And that's what I mean by the fine line between just sitting back and relaxing into it. Versus perhaps juggling the fear at the same time as navigating the pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really big discussion, this one, because it's about connecting with pleasure and joy and just the beautiful pure essence of who we are as humans, with pure wild abandon without having to like attach the ego to it, about it's actually just being purely in the body. And yes, that can still trigger other people, and you can feel like, oh, perhaps I'm too much, or perhaps I need to like reel this back in a little bit. But I think if you're always really connecting to your intention for why you want to connect to your body, that is the really critical piece. And yes, we also give transmissions by osmosis. So just by being who we are in our bodies, other people, from that pure intention, other people will pick up on that. Other people will feel it and want a bit, want some of it. And if people do judge you, or you feel the tall poppy syndrome energy there, then I mean, we can talk more about that with regards to boundaries and about how we connect with other people, and what we allow and what we don't allow into our lives energetically.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is sort of pausing to drop in and think, well, who's my tribe? And who am I connecting to share this journey with, which is actually really part early on of the Rocksteady process and program, is find your people who are non-judgmental and curious alongside. And then also noticing which people maybe it doesn't feel safe to explore this stuff around. And having that sense of co-regulation, having a community that we can regulate our nervous systems together for the better, as opposed to triggering into those maladaptive cycles of fight, flight, freeze, because for whatever reason there's fear arising.
Yeah, absolutely. Having people people that you trust, people that you can share with, you know, whether it's a women's circle or just whether it's like just however you want to show up in that space. You know, it's all very individual how you do that. But absolutely, you know, people who you can feel your absolute self with, and it's really important.
And to be witnessed is so powerful. I'd love to
Yes.
shift this conversation on a slight tangent, Shay, because I know it's one of your areas of great interest, deep interest, which is moving beyond the drama of rites of passage with, I mean, we could talk about many different rites of passage, like our first sexual experience or childbirth, but I want to really focus in on menopause and midlife changes, which I suppose includes men as well. But I'd love to move beyond the drama and the bigness and the conditioning and the toxic narratives. And I'd love you to share a little bit about how it can be gentle and beautiful and tender and raw and so okay and so normal.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Yeah, it's such a big one because, you know, like I went through an early menopause when I was 43. And so my journey has been, you know, it shocked the life out of me when it happened, Joey. I wasn't ready, you know, like I was starting to feel, I was feeling perimenopausal, but I was thinking this would go on for another maybe 8 years. And then all of a sudden I stopped bleeding. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in menopause. So when you speak of moving beyond the drama, you know, my first reaction to that was, I don't want to be old before my time. I don't want this to be happening to me. What does this mean? All of the societal conditioning was extremely present. And I think menopause, you know, it's starting to be spoken about so much more now, which is just fantastic. It's a really, it's a topic of conversation and a rite of passage for women that is really at the forefront of, you know, conversations in the media about women now, which is fantastic. But that's probably happened in the past couple of years, I think. And when I was going through menopause, it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I didn't feel that. Like I felt like, you know, what I started to do was talk about my experiences with my community, with my friends, and actually start to really explore this, because I had all those very visceral responses to not wanting to be menopausal, you know, huge resistance. And I just want to say that it's a natural thing. So when you talk about moving beyond the drama, I think there's a very natural thing that happens, that it's like, I don't want to be this. I'm not ready for this. I mean, some women who have had that opportunity to journey for 10 years, I have friends in my life like that, are ready. They're ready to stop bleeding, but that's not the case for all women. And so it is natural to sort of feel that resistance and revolt.
And I want to say, you know, these changes to our body are really physical, and they're mental, emotional, spiritual. We're rebirthing into a new person. So there's a bigness to it, and it's highly significant. But there's space to keep it gentle and grounded and earthy. And I think society loves a good drama, and often the menopausal woman gets painted, you know, in not very appealing ways. Whereas I love how you're recreating her, the midlife woman, as a woman in her power. She knows her pleasure. She knows what she wants. She knows what she doesn't want. And she's no longer busy cooking and cleaning for a bunch of little, you know, dependents. So she has time and energy and expressiveness. There's such power, and it's painted as an exciting chapter that we're maturing into, as opposed to a descent and a sign we're dying.
Yeah.
And our expiry date is up.
Yeah. And, you know, there's so much beauty in the becoming of this stage of life. And I just want to touch on the fact that, you know, in the media, like out there in the world, you know, when we think of crone, we think of like an old lady with gray hair, like, well, maybe 70 plus. Yeah. And that's not even old, you know, but that's sort of like the image that's depicted. You don't see women at midlife really depicted in their power. it's starting to happen a little bit. But yeah, it's really not something that is that women grow up feeling connected to, you know. Like you don't, in your 30s, you don't necessarily look at women in their 50s and think, I can't wait to be there, you know, or oh wow, I'm really, yeah, it's vulnerable, and yeah, it's aging. Yeah.
I'm the odd one out there because I had a sexual trauma at the age of 13. So
Mm.
I basically, now I realize I never felt safe as a maiden, as a sexy woman. I didn't like people looking at me. It really impacted my relationship to myself and sexuality. It's just too much, too soon, too confusing. So I loved the idea of being an older woman who had more invisibility, and people would leave her alone. And I've, you know, when I was a little girl and people said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be an older woman with gray hair who was friendly and approachable and loving and really safe. And I wanted to be that woman that people gravitated towards because she had nice energy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think I'm
Yeah.
on track to becoming her.
Oh, you're so on track to becoming her. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, she is alive in you, and that's such a beautiful thing. And you know what you describe, I'm sure there's many women out there that can relate to what you just shared, Joey. And thank you for sharing it, because it's important to share that you know, that side of things, that version of oneself, because it is different to the majority of society who are just so conditioned to stay young, so conditioned to, you know, like look a certain way and act a certain way and be received in a certain way. And, you know, and there's a lot of, you know, just even in workplaces, in corporate workplaces, there's a lot of midlife shaming that I've seen over the years, you know, like it's out there, it happens. So there is a huge letting go of all of that. And if there is, you know, if you've done the work in the lead up to it, and you're willing to take off that cloak, you know, and to actually willingly step into this stage of life with almost a sense of relief, you know, that's a beautiful place to be. But it's not the place most women find themselves, and there is a journey that you need to go through in order to navigate that. Yeah.
And I want to say keywords that come up for me in this. For me, it's like the house of cards is falling down. It's like, oh, that's not working anymore. It just feels so wrong to keep being that person. And shifting into this place of, well, who am I? And what does feel in alignment is, for me, feels groundless. And that the part of me that wants control and wants certainty and wants to live in the delusion that things are actually certain, you know, she's kind of keeping me trapped back in what I know, what I'm in control of. You know, I can vacuum every Monday or clean bed sheets. But stepping into groundlessness and staying there and allowing myself to remain groundless and to not know and to be responsive takes us right back to that thing of pleasure. It's like to be present, to be truly present means I have no idea what is arising in this moment. Let me check. It's dropping all preconceptions. And I said to you yesterday on the phone, one part of my transformation that feels really subtle but speaks volumes is the old Joey before birthing my second son. She really loved fresh bed sheets, and she liked the smell of them. She liked the feel of them. It was a treat. Whereas the new Joey that's kind of gone into the dark descent and met a lot of my inner selves that was very, very vulnerable and dark, and a lot of old trauma, a lot of childhood sadness and hurt, attachment theory stuff. The new Joey's like kind of more okay in the darkness and the mess. And so now fresh bed sheets feel sterile, and I actually really like smelling my baby's vomit and sweat and poo stains, and the dirty bed sheets feel really comforting and really okay. And I feel like symbolically it's like I've relaxed into being human instead of this artificial sensationalized frat girl kind of media housewife, woman, whatever we're told we need to be on different days of the week. Just dropping all of that and coming back into showing up to what actually brings me pleasure right now. It's like, yeah, just smelling my baby. Feels good.
And yes, and I love it. And it's such a sign. It's such a sign that, you know, you are in your body as well when you get to that point, I think. And it's the same with menopause, you know, like it's a similar thing that happens, you know, where you're you know, you stop sort of the expectation, you know, that I need to be here, and actually just open to, well, what is? And also, you know, that concept of just doing what the fuck you want and actually just being who you are, you know, and yeah, just taking off the cloak of pressure, you know. I think that's a huge part of really opening your heart to yourself and to life.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure this will come up in the work you do, Shay, but with my rock steady clients, a really common theme is this kind of stark reality slap that, oh my God, most of my life is revolving around other people, whether it be children or partners or colleagues or friends or parents, employers. There's so much of the energy and decision making is based on this external framework of expectation, agendas, shoulds. You know, it can show up as people pleasing. It can show up as, you know, trying to climb the ladder of hierarchy and status. It can show up in different ways, but essentially it's this thing of, oh, I'm not listening to my body, and I'm not putting myself first, and I have no idea what pleases me. I haven't explored pleasure for years. You know, that can be a really common slap in the face.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah.
did you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, I just think, you know, in terms of
Mm.
the pressure that we put on ourselves around, you know, exploring pleasure when we've had other stuff going on,
Mm.
it's a huge one, and it's what stops so many women from doing it, you know. And you know, we've talked about the vulnerability in that, but I think when we really wind back and actually look at what we've been how we've been educated and what we've been presented with throughout our lives, that actually it's a version of pleasure, it's a version of sexuality, that or it's a level, it's an expectation that we feel like we need to meet. And it feels like, it feels so far beyond us. Like I'm feeling that in my body. I've been feeling that in my body in the last few years, in a way, with regards to my menopausal journey. You know, like my body has changed. I'm not engaging with myself sexually or with pleasure in the way that I used to, you know. And it's vulnerable. It's so vulnerable because, you know, like I'm a single woman at the moment, and, you know, it's big, you know, it's a constant remembering to wind it back and remember that actually experiencing pleasure in the body can be so subtle and nurturing and beautiful. Like it doesn't have to look like a particular kind of thing that we've been conditioned to believe it to look like. And then through that gentle pleasure, through that nurturing experience of self-pleasure, or with a partner, you know, our bodies can open so deeply, in fact, much deeper than if we sort of follow that old, what I would describe as yang or male pattern of arousal, where, you know, we're expected to sort of, you know, perform or act in a certain way, and meet a particular sexual standard.
And a lot of that's subconscious. So it's not like we're actively have an agenda and we're performing like an actress or actor. It's a subliminal thing where we're, well, how do they expect me to be, or what should I be feeling or doing right now? So it's this. But I really liked what you said about what I would consider sort of the old version of me. My neural maps aren't like that anymore, and my physiology is changing. Perhaps my juiciness is changing. Perhaps the things that turn me on and turn me off are changing. And how am I to know that if I'm not actively exploring and having this willingness to call what I would call living the rock steady way of life, which is pausing and being present and questioning mainstream again and again. And I also like that we've brought up self-pleasuring, because I really feel that it does start with self-study, and it starts with us. And a lot of my rock steady participants notice that as they go, they reclaim their bodies, they reclaim their narratives, they reclaim their desired sensations, and they call them out, and they find a way to activate those neural pathways and build those neural new normals. So they become a new person. They're not who they were. They're not going backwards, and they're not reclaiming what was lost. They're actually drawing a line in the sand and blossoming into a new version of themselves through self-study. And from there, relationships change. Their marriage changes, the relationship with their
Absolutely.
children changes. So it starts here, but then it blossoms into the outer and the shared experience. And as I have done a little bit of research now into some of the, I suppose the hot conversations in sexuality right now, a lot of it's around self-pleasure really being the cornerstone of all exploration of sexuality. So it starts here, and it starts finding
Yes.
safety, and it starts with small steps, and it starts with giving ourselves permission to explore our Eros.
Yes. And, there's so much in that as well. There's so much vulnerability right there, in actually meeting ourselves and meeting our Eros. And even, like some women might not even feel like their Eros is even alive. Like it might just be the tiniest flicker that is indiscernible, so it really, it can take a while.
I would say many
Yes.
women.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So it
Potentially
can
the
take
majority.
a lot. Yes. So it can take a lot to really meet yourself there, and also the stories around self-pleasure. Like, I mean, I don't know about you, Joey, but I was raised to think up to a certain age, probably my, I don't know, early to mid 20s, that self-pleasure is something that you do if you can't get a man. It's outrageous. But this is some of the narrative that can lie really deep within us. So, from that perspective, it's really about repatterning that story that, we are worthy to give this to ourselves and to explore our own bodies.
And if we can hold it lightly and take a perspective of safety and play and exploration, it can be really fun.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a young mum, got 2 little ones. So getting time to myself is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've taken to disappearing to sit quietly with myself. And that can be really, really honestly very pleasurable. Not touching, but just being in my own solitude, or disappearing to the bathroom and getting some yummy fragrant oils and massaging my body. And there's so many ways we can ritualize it and make it a practice, whatever feels doable and workable and gratifying.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be an invitation for listeners, is think about what little pleasure rituals feel workable and safe for you this week, and play with that.
Yeah.
And know that it will change. I might get sick of my oil massages at some point and it turns into something else. And this is that rock steady self-study inquiry of what works on Monday might not feel right on Tuesday.
Yeah. And to open to that and be okay with that, to move with whatever is present for you in the moment. And to, and to give yourself permission to explore that as well. Yeah, so many different things. Like, it could be to cupping the breasts and massaging the breasts. That's a really beautiful one as well. I mean, that's also extreme. I mean, the whole experience of connecting with your own body is vulnerable. There's no escaping that. I think that is, especially when you're beginning this journey, and I think that that's a really important message as well, that actually the feeling of vulnerability, the feeling of and the challenges that we move through in order to begin a practice like this is normal. It's completely normal, and most of us go through it. So I feeling not alone in that is really important.
I got the giggles there because as I dropped into my deepest vulnerability to date, this is after birthing my second son, I had the therapist going. So like I had, part of me was holding me and really deeply fascinated by this feelings of falling apart and spinning in a washing machine upside down. And there was a part of me that just hated being vulnerable. It was like, I don't ever want to go there. I hate it. There was such strong resistance, and I had to really hold and nurture that part of me, which now that I've had a bucket load of practice, is I feel now when I enter these places of vulnerability and openness and capacity to be in reciprocity with the world and to feel, because my walls and my armor is not so protective,
Mm,
and I can relax into it. Now I really enjoy it, and it feels like, oh, good, I'm coming back. So it's like if I lose,
mm,
if I now have distance from that vulnerability, for me, it's a sign I'm hardening, and I'm probably rushing, and I'm probably somehow hooked on some agenda of how things should be. So then I've got
mm,
to kind of go unlearn a bit and come back and revisit where I really am and
mm,
get real and honest. And then the vulnerability sort of bubbles up again. And I'm like, oh, this is starting to feel pleasant.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, tenderness is,
yeah,
I think, it's almost like tenderness is what we're wanting to explore. Tenderness with self.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
and self-holding, and that can be very archetypal as well, so your inner child will be
Mm.
present, your maiden will be present, the mother will be present, like all the tenderness in all of those archetypes,
Different parts of our inner
different
world.
parts of us. Yeah. Mm,
So, for you listeners out there, if you're just feeling a bit confused and stuck about how to access pleasure and where to start, it could very well be that there are difficult suppressed traumas living in the body that are numbing that and making it a little inaccessible or bland. And getting support with people like Shay and finding sex positive therapists or support people to help you really safely explore your inner world, um, that could be an avenue for you to explore. And I know it is quite common with Rocksteady participants. I've had some say that it's taken them 3 months to understand how to body scan. But I just think what an incredible commitment that they kept at it for 3 months.
mm,
3 months of just keeping on going. I know I'm not getting something here, but I'm just going to keep at it. I'm going to be willing. And that's what it is. It's this willingness to meet whatever's inside. And I know, as I mentioned with my 13-year-old experience, as I was patient with her and really let her trust me, this is my inner 13-year-old, when she came back and spoke with me, my pleasure came back.
mm,
Because she was in resistance in my body and needing integration. She'd been suppressed for 25 years, and meeting her and coming back to her, and I had all these skills and tools to do that. um it was like, oh, okay, that's unlocked more pleasure.
mm.
So just
Yeah.
opening that out there for listeners who feel stuck, maybe there's some gentle work to be done.
Absolutely. And exploring these different parts of ourselves, and intuitively, like if intuitively you feel your inner 13-year-old needs support, holding, exploration of what might have happened at that time, or perhaps it was when you lost your virginity, or different stages
Or
of your life,
the menarche is
trusting
often,
your the menarche is a huge one.
yeah.
Absolutely. Just really trusting in what is present for you and what's coming up, and following those threads of intuition that are there. And a beautiful practice that you can do is visualize yourself at that age, and see if you can meet the eyes of yourself at that in your inner world, and even bring that little version of yourself into your arms, into your heart. That's a really beautiful practice, to just to bring those parts of yourself home, because this is what we're doing. We're bringing parts of ourselves home to live in more wholeness.
Yeah, and keeping it trauma sensitive might mean if there is an active part of your inner world or your inner child, let's say, as an example, that you feel is unprocessed and difficult, ask them what they want, because eye contact might freak them out. So ask that inner 13-year-old, how can I support you? Do you want to stand a meter away from me? Like, build the trust up with yourself as well, because that re-traumatization is something we control, and where we choose how we relate to our bodies if we're given those tools and the self-permission again to not feel as though we have to do it a certain way. It doesn't have to look
Yeah.
or feel a certain way. We can be creative in our imaginal space. So talking directly to that fragile part of ourselves and letting them run the show
Beautiful, Joey.
can be really a powerful way, and that can be slower too. Yeah, like gentle. Shay, I would love to share your website, which I believe is shaeelise.com. And
That's right.
I will
Yeah.
link that everywhere this
Great.
discussion is posted.
Thank you.
If you could speak to that part of yourself and offer that part of yourself that feels vulnerable in pleasure, if you could offer her perhaps a mantra or a piece of encouragement, what do you think you would say to that part of you that's feeling a bit vulnerable?
I am worthy. I am worthy is the mantra. You know, I think our sense of self-worth, as I mentioned earlier, is really what underpins all of this work, all of this exploration. So just remembering that we are inherently worthy, you know, and the vulnerability is in really accepting that, you know, that despite how we might have shown up in life, despite what's going on for us, that actually we are inherently worthy. And gentleness as well is the second thing. Just a real intention to meet yourself from a space of gentle, loving, nurturing care.
And my favorite mantras to my little Joey lately have been, Joey, I'm here for you. And Joey, take your time. And they just really hit the spot. So I invite you listeners to find your inner coming home language. Find what resonates and what feels supportive. Shay, thank you so much for your time. These conversations, you know, they could become entire volumes.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited for the Rocksteady community to start finding their language around pleasure and finding their people, finding their pleasure tribe, and sex positive people to talk to. All consensual sex that feels pleasurable is good sex, is basically the summary of being sex positive. And I really like that.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for having me, Joey. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. I'm Joey Remenyi from seekingbalance.com.au. If you're curious to learn more, come visit and say hi at my website or join my Facebook group where we all share how we're using neuroplasticity to remap and rewire our new normal. So it's a bye for now.